40 exposed passengers have already walked off the hantavirus ship, and the outbreak has now reached 12 different countries across 5 continents and counting. People were horrified after 5 different just US states, Arizona, California, Georgia, Texas, and Virginia, are now racing to find returning passengers, just hoping they don't expose anyone else.
You already know what it is. It's your boy Laid Back with another reaction, another review, another episode. Hey, TikTok, you up to bet? Bah! It's your boy Laid Back. Welcome back to my channel. Hey, 2 things we gotta do. You gotta hit that subscribe button. I'm drinking this water. You already know what it is, man. Think rich in 2026. Think rich in 2026. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Stay up to date with all the videos. We back with another one, man. Hey, before we get into it, make sure you tap into my TikTok. I'm telling you, I say it all the time, but it's lit. Make sure you tap into my TikTok, man. It'll be in the pinned comment. Also, be back with another one. Y'all know some stuff going around on the cruise ship and all that. I ain't gonna say nothing. There's stuff going around. And you make it to the end of this one, you a real one for real, man. Don't forget, also hit that like button for your boy, man. Drop me a like, man. Let's go, squad. But let's go ahead and get into it. Fire Squad. What's poppin'? Let's get it.
40 exposed passengers have already walked off the hantavirus ship, and the outbreak has now reached 12 different countries across 5 continents and counting. People were horrified after 5 different just US states, Arizona, California, Georgia, Texas, and Virginia, are now racing to find returning passengers, just hoping they don't expose anyone else. And even on Kaushi, 1 in 5 people now believe this can become the next official WHO global emergency before the year is out. Hey. Reports show this outbreak was taking the lives of passengers for 3 weeks without authorities alerting anyone. Ports kept welcoming them, and by then a woman from the ship had already boarded a flight to Johannesburg with 82 other passengers that were exposed for hours, all free and about, most still unable to be traced. But it gets much worse, as a flight attendant from another plane had just been hospitalized in Amsterdam, meaning the virus isn't just on one plane now, but could be on a whole other plane traveling with all new passengers. Despite these things, the WHO has insisted this is not going to turn into a global issue. The Andes strain only spreads through prolonged close contact, not the air, so you're not going to get it walking down the street.
Do your own research, man. Do your own research.
And we are just finding out about the fact that 40 people left this ship. I think we got to get the timeline right now for the hantavirus for everybody. The first man dies on this cruise ship, and then 40 passengers leave the ship between April 24th and 29th. During that same time, the wife of the man who had died, she's on her way home. Her husband, who had passed away, going to go to Johannesburg. In the airport, she dies, collapses, and dies. Between April 26th and May 2nd, everyone's getting sick on this ship, all right? And then May 2nd, we have our 3rd person die. German passenger dies on board. Between May 5th and May 6th, medical evacuations are happening off of the ship. And then on May the 7th, just yesterday, a global tracking system is now underway after a Switzerland man who disembarked at St. Helena when those 40 other passengers so disembarked before the other people started dying. Well, he's sick too. Folks, that means that right now we have a cruise ship that had people representing 23 different countries.
Wow.
We don't know where the passengers who left the ship are right now. We do know that it is being transferred, and we do know that multiple people have died. And we know that people on the ship are still getting sick right now.
Dang. I'm just...
In the hantavirus outbreak, there's something super interesting happening in the background, almost like a crime scene investigation for disease detectives, and it's very important. Let me explain why. The leading hypothesis for the start of this cruise ship outbreak is that a couple acquired hantavirus during this bird watching excursion at a landfill in a small southern city in Argentina, which started on April 1st. The hypothesis is that rodents in the area were carrying hantavirus and caused this zoonotic transmission to the passengers, but here's where and why an investigation is needed. A 2014 study by Argentinian researchers looked at the risk of hantavirus Andes strain based on where human cases have occurred and where the rodent reservoir is found. In their model, which you can see here, the highest risk areas is in the northern regions, but where the cruise ship excursion took place is down here in the southern region classified as low risk. So what changed? That study was done in 2014. In recent years, there has been a noticeable increase in human hantavirus cases in Argentina. Researchers there suspect suspect it's a result of climate change and warming temperatures, which is causing the rodent population reservoir to move into new areas and changing the risk. So the Argentinian Health Agency has sent a team to the site to trap rodents, test them for hantavirus, and if positive, sequence the genetic material. What could this tell us? Well, first off, whether the risk of hantavirus in Argentina is shifting geographically. And second, it could potentially confirm that this cruise ship outbreak did in fact originate in Argentina at this location. Now, this investigation will take weeks, if not months. They have to trap rodents, they have to test them for hantavirus, recover the virus, sequence the genetic material, and then analyze it for comparison. Nevertheless, this is a key point of the investigation to help guide future prevention measures so we don't see another outbreak like this, because this outbreak is a clear example that pathogens know no borders. This is something that I'll be watching closely, so follow along if you want to stay updated.
Bro, this sound like...
They got it from being in the trash. Oh, and the people that got off the boat and flew back to their countries, some of them have been confirmed to have the virus. You see, come to find out, the couple who brought the virus in the first place was bird watching in a landfill full of rats that they might have inhaled dust that was infused with the rats' doo-doo. Oh, and we find out some of those passengers that got off the boat did have the virus and took the virus with them to Israel, South Africa, and Switzerland. The ones in America have not shown any symptoms yet, but it takes 1 to 8 weeks before you will know if they got it. And again, this version of the virus passes on from human to human contact and has a 40% chance of fatality. It stated that if these people were showing symptoms on the plane, whoever was near them probably got it. But if they weren't, then the people near them didn't get it. Side note, make sure to follow, have notifications on, or join the Discord on my page to stay updated on everything that's going on. But the US is still claiming that there is no worry. They are trying to have everything under control. That there hasn't been any cases of anyone who wasn't on the boat getting it yet, besides doctors that were trying to treat the people.
Dang, 40% chance, bro.
So I know a lot of you have probably seen the news about the recent hantavirus cluster outbreak on an Antarctic cruise ship, the MV Hondius. Well, on May 7th of 2026 at around 7:45 a.m., Dr. Robert Malone, who I'm sure some of you have probably heard of because he was on the Joe Rogan Experience back during 2020, 2021 timeframe, he said, quote, "Your odds of being struck by lightning are more than 7 times greater than getting hantavirus in the USA. About 250 people get struck by lightning each year. There are about 35 cases per year of hantavirus in the UEA, with about 12 deaths per year on average. Obviously, hantavirus shouldn't be a big concern for the vast majority of Americans." Now, just in case you haven't heard of Dr. Robert Malone, he's an American physician, a biochemist, a scientist specializing in virology, immunology, molecular biology, vaccines, and drug repurposing. He's got a bachelor's in science and biochemistry from UC Davis, a master's in science and biology from UC San Diego, and an MD from Northwestern University. He also completed a clinical research fellowship at Harvard Medical School and pathology training at UC Davis. Bottom line is the guy is credible and knows what he's talking about. And his statistics are roughly accurate because recent National Weather Service estimates put the annual number of people struck by lightning in the U.S. at around 270, with approximately 27 deaths and 243 injuries on average in the last decade or so. And CDC data shows that roughly 20 to 40 cases happen per year in the United States of hantavirus, and the fatality rate's about 35 to 40%, which aligns with the 10 to 14 deaths per year on average. And considering there's 250 lightning strikes or 270 lightning strikes that hit people per year annually in the United States, and there's roughly 35 cases of hantavirus in the United States, then yes, you're about 7 times more likely to be struck by lightning than you are catching the hantavirus in the United States.
I ain't never heard of this joint before.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but did anybody else know that hundreds of vials of deadly viruses went missing after a lab breach in 2021? Take a wild guess what one of those viruses was. Queensland Health Minister Tim Nicholls announced today, this was back in 2024, that 323 samples of live viruses, including Hendra-virus, Lissa-virus, and hantavirus, went missing in 2021 in a serious breach of biosecurity protocols. But back in 2024, when this story was reported on, they assured the public the lab has not been able to conclude if the viruses were destroyed or removed from secure storage, but they do not appear to have been stolen. There is nothing to suggest that these have been taken from the laboratory. Secondly, we do not have any evidence that Hendra virus has been weaponized in any way in any research laboratory. He didn't give an update about the Hamta virus, though. Fast forward to 2026 and surprise, surprise, all of a sudden we found some Hamta virus on a cruise ship. Again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but doesn't this kind of sound like the plot of the movie 12 Monkeys? We've got the government saying that they're going to release the UFO files, and all of a sudden we've got all this chatter and buzz around the potential of aliens coming from the future to warn us in the present about bionuclear war. And then it turns out that those aliens are just really us from the future. It sounds just like the movie 12 Monkeys, because again, it is people from the future traveling to the past, not to stop a bionuclear war, but to stop what seems to be bio warfare, right? The weaponization of viruses. But again, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think that The Simpsons or movies or novels are predicting the future. But what does seem more realistic to me is that there's a lot of malevolent people with a whole lot of power that maybe have seen some of these movies, read some of these books, are really into sci-fi, who would like to live out these scenarios because they're so effing bored. That to me sounds a lot more believable.
This whole thing sounds crazy.
The people on the cruise ship that have the Hamta virus that were just allowed to get off the ship because not all of them have the virus. Well, I have a little story to tell you, and take it as you will, do whatever you want with this information, but listen up. I grew up on ships because of my dad's job. He worked on large cargo ships. So in order for us to see my dad or hang out with him, we would sail away with him once a year for like 3 months. So when I was 8 years old, one summer, we sailed away. Basically, the other employees, they have kids as well. So all of the kids on the ship, we hang out in this little like playroom or whatever. One of the kids on that ship ended up having lice. So he ended up infecting the other kids with lice, and we all started getting lice. So I ended up getting lice. I ended up giving my sister the lice. Dang. And by the time we like brushed off and got rid of all the lice in my head, my sister ended up giving me the fucking lice. And by the time we got rid of the lice from my sister's head, I ended up giving my sister back the lice. Anyway, it was like a whole issue between the freaking kids. And in the end, by the end of like the 2-3 months of the cruise ship, we ended up getting rid of all of the lice to all of the kids. So we thought. So I get off the ship to the port. I go home, lice free. I go back to school to 4th grade. Luckily, the way our school works is that every grade is isolated. Thank God. Basically, I started attending. Within a week or 2 weeks in school, lo and behold, guess what's happening? Kids are getting lice in my grade. And everyone's looking around. They're like, who is giving everyone lice? I'm thinking, it's not me. It can't be me, because I already had the lice multiple times and I got off the ship with no lice. So it's definitely not me. It's a coincidence. Anyway, guess who was actually giving everyone lice? Me. This girl. That's right. Eggs? It was me. Because apparently eggs? When I got off the ship, I had little balls of lice living in my head, not in my head, like on my scalp. And I just had no idea. And they were just growing and jumping. Anyway, they were trying to figure out patient zero. They were looking for me. They were trying to figure out who the fuck was giving, because everyone in my grade in 4th grade ended up getting lice. And they were trying to find patient zero. And I was like, well, it's not me. And I remember I was like in the bathroom, my mom just like brushing off these lice. And my mom said at this point, my lice were like this large. She was like, what? She was like, they were like huge, Violetta. They were so.
How the hell they get that big? You just don't see it on your head?
Big. Thanks, Mom. Like, okay, not right now. So anyway, she was brushing off the lice, and there was a friend that came over to play with me, and I was like, not now, we're busy. As my mom's like brushing off the lice, because I was so scared that people were going to find out that I infected everyone. But yeah, that happened. So anyway, in conclusion, start doing your little TikTok dances, and good luck. God bless.
A fifth case has now been linked to the deadly cruise ship virus outbreak. So what is hantavirus? And should people actually be worried about another COVID-style situation? The World Health Organization says the number of laboratory-confirmed cases linked to the MV Hondius has now risen to 5. That includes multiple passengers who were evacuated from the ship and transferred to a hospital in the Netherlands on Wednesday. Officials say 8 total cases are now connected to the outbreak, with 1 sample still being tested. And what's raising concern is this. The strain involved is the Andes variant of hantavirus. That's one of the only known forms of the virus that can spread between humans through close contact. Although fortunately, experts say that remains rare. In spite of this, there have been growing comparisons online to the early days of COVID, something the WHO is now trying to shut down.
I think people see me sometimes and I think, it's like the next COVID. And I really just want to assure people this is something that's quite different.
The ship is currently off the coast of Cape Verde with nearly 150 people on board. So what actually is hantavirus? It's a rare disease usually spread by infected rodents, often through breathing in particles from rat or mouse droppings. Investigators' leading theory is that a Dutch couple may have picked up the virus during a bird-watching trip near a landfill in Argentina before boarding the ship, but officials say they're still investigating exactly where the outbreak began. Symptoms can take weeks to appear and include fever, muscle pain, vomiting, dizziness, and severe breathing difficulties that can become life-threatening. 3 passengers have already died. Health officials in South Africa are now tracing dozens of people who may have come into contact with infected passengers, including airport staff, hospital workers, and fellow travelers.
There's a lot of uncertainty, and that's the hardest part.
He sounds stressed the hell out.
You're not all going to die from hantavirus, regardless of what a lot of people on the internet or on social media are saying. Let's go further into the numbers and actually look at what the literature, the actual data shows us about not even old world hantavirus, the one associated with the renal fever hemorrhagic, the one from the old world. Those are the European strains. We're talking about the ones from South America that are associated with HCPS or HPS, so hantavirus cardiopulmonary syndrome or hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Let's take a look. So let's look at some actual data. So we look at the BMC Public Health. They have a paper labeled The Seroprevalence of Hantavirus Infection in Non-Epidemic Settings Over 4 Decades, a systematic review and meta-analysis. This is from September of 2024.
Why is this
We can
computer
even
glitching?
skip, if you'd like, the fact that there are over 81,000 tests included in here with 3,207 events. So what does that even mean? That means the global prevalence of people who have antibodies to hantavirus is 2.93%. But I'm even going to ignore that, and we're going to go strictly to the Americas, okay? Because we know that it is the hantaviruses from the New World, the ones from the South Americas, that are associated with HCPS, HPS. We're talking about a 2.43% seroprevalence. That means that, on average, 2.43% of the population has antibodies to hantavirus, which means they have been exposed and may or may not have actually had an illness. My favorite sentence from the entire thing is this: the presence of these viruses across the world, even in areas where clinical cases are rare, suggests that the widespread exposure has occurred globally, with many individuals likely coming into contact with the virus without developing severe illness.
Wow.
So again, this is all has to be taken into the context of statistics. And if we're making comparisons to something like COVID-19, Wuhan strain, the original strain, and every strain that came after it were new viruses to us, right, that we were not exposed to, had a very high R0, which is a measure of infectiousness, basically between people to people, with an R0 of like 2 to 6, I think, for COVID. I can't remember, right? The R0 of actual hantavirus approaches 0, which means it is not a new virus, it is not as highly transmissible, and even though a manifestation of it, which is HCPS and HPS, we know those specific disease subtypes have a very high mortality rate. That is not the mortality rate of an overall infection. Long story short, stay informed, stay up to date, take precautions for yourself if you want to, but fear-mongering a potential 30, 40, or 50% mortality if you ever come in contact with hantavirus is news headline. That's all it is. It's grabby, it grabs your attention, it gets you to read articles and see videos, but it's unfortunately not the reality, or fortunately not the reality. And we're not even looking into the whole actual transmissibility between person to person, which is very low documented, and transmissibility to healthcare workers is exquisitely rare.
Wow. Do y'all Do your own research, though. Do your own research.
Hey, this is Dr. James, board-certified pediatrician, and so let's talk hantavirus. It's in the news. Do you need to be worried? Well, the fact that when I started medicine was when first hantavirus started coming in was one of those scary things that we had in southwestern United States. I was in El Paso, Texas, and they were starting to see these people that were getting diagnosed in these cabins up in New Mexico. And so everybody got really, really excited about it. And what we've learned over the years is that hantavirus, although it is extremely severe, can cause very bad illnesses, it's not super widespread. Now, the thing that you're seeing in the news now that they're afraid of is that somehow it is mutated and becomes something that can be spread person to person. What we had seen before was that it was pretty much from a rodent, usually mice, and it was from their urine. And what would happen is they would be in the buildings, in the cabins and stuff that weren't used very much. They would pee. That pee would then dry, and it would become dust. And then as you were cleaning the cabin, it would become aerosolized, and then you could breathe that, and then it could cause the illness. Usually takes, like 1 to 4 weeks before you get sick. Could cause extremely bad respiratory problems and even death. So it is a scary illness, but it's not something that's ever taken, wide scale infections. But if it became something where it could be spread person to person, well, that's something that you have to worry about. So right now, would I worry? No, I would sit there and watch. I would, if you've been exposed to anybody who has had it or has been exposed to it, yeah, I would definitely watch. But mainly I would just watch the news and see what happens. These isolated cases on this cruise ship are not anything for widespread panic. It's just something that on the news, anything that's new, exciting, and causes death, well, that gets clicks, and it's something that they can get you excited about. So take a deep breath. I would not put it up really, really high on the scared thing. If I was going to be scared of anything right now, I'd be a lot more scared of the measles than I would be of hantavirus.
And shout out to the Spanish lady on that boat who got the tea, because she just gave us a list who got off that boat. Now, 23 passengers have already gotten off that boat 2 weeks ago, and we're just finding out about this now. Now, according to El País, which is a Spanish newspaper in Spain, they've reached out to somebody who is from Spain on that boat, and here's what they had to say. According to that passenger, they said 23 people had already gotten off the boat 2 weeks ago. We're just finding out about it now. According to that Spanish passenger who is still on the boat, I want to make that clear. That person is still on the boat. They're just talking to the Spanish publication. They said they landed at St. Helena on April 22nd. And then they said that that's when those people got off the boat. Now, that was 10 days after the first person had passed away. So it's understandable that those 23 people were like, hey, just get me off this boat. That's understandable. Now, this is a quote directly from that Spanish passenger. They said, in St. Helena, 23 people got off. There are 23 people going around. And until 3 days ago, no one contacted them. So they didn't even know that they were they know now, but they didn't even know until a few days ago that they were even in close contact with somebody with this virus. Now, the Spanish passenger goes on to say that while most of them are still under strict hygiene and isolation, 23 people are home. And this is who the Spanish passenger says they believe got off the boat. So they said that an Australian who went to Australia, they said someone from Taiwan who was on the boat went to Taiwan. Americans, because this affects us, Americans went to North America. An English lady went to England, and then Dutch to their home. Now, remember, I think that was the person who had got sick, right? The Dutch, wasn't it he Dutch? Okay, well, now we know. Now, the Spanish passenger said, I don't remember. She doesn't remember if anybody from Spain was in that group of 23, but these are the people that she remembers. Now, after El País reached out to the World Health Organization, they said, yeah, we had the ship operator reach out to those people. Because again, that's how that guy in Lake Zurich knew to go to the hospital, because they reached out to him. So hopefully he was the only case of the 23 people from that boat to get in contact with the hantavirus. Now, that still doesn't account for the people on the plane, and we're still waiting on word to hear back. Do they know that they have come in contact with that lady. Now, if there's anything else about this hantavirus that I find, I'm going to keep y'all posted.
They done let them people off the boat with that virus. And there's 5 of them that have returned to the United States. 2 in Georgia, 1 in Arizona, 1 in Virginia, and 1 in Texas. I think that them people should publicly tell us who they are. They should have to publicly tell us who they are, and they should be forced to quarantine until next year. All of them should be confined to their homes. Don't go nowhere. Don't touch nothing. Don't buy nothing. The government, y'all need to go ahead and send them some food and everything else. They need to take care of them. We know y'all got it. Y'all pay for other stuff like never mind. But anywho, y'all need to go ahead and take care of them people. Feed them, give them the medical attention they need, all from the comfort of their home. Do not let them people leave their house. Y'all don't get to have no summer break. Them people should not be allowed to cruise. They shouldn't be allowed to leave their driveway. They shouldn't be allowed to cut their grass. Stay in the goddamn house. Don't come outside. Y'all don't come outside till next year. Matter of fact, y'all don't come outside. Take a whole year off. We'll see y'all May the 7th of next year. That's the way they should be treated. Cause come on, bro, we not about to do this shit again, man. Y'all gonna let them off the boat, and then here it go. They said that 24 of them got off the boat like 2.5 weeks ago. So like people been home with this shit? Come on, fam, y'all wildin', bro. Y'all wildin'. Enough is enough, man. Fine, we need to find out who them 5 people is. Come on, TikTok. I know y'all got some detectives. We need to find the 5 individuals that are in the country that was on that damn boat. We need to either we need to quarantine the people so that we can make sure that we taking care of it. Because they talking about some person-to-person contact is low. Shit. 1 person done died from it. 2 people died from it. That's person-to-person. That's enough for me right there. No, sir. We not doing that this summer, man.
If hantavirus is not normally transmitted from person to person, how is it possible, do you think, that multiple people on the ship have the virus?
Yeah, a hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship was not on my top 50 or even 100 things that I would worry about for a cruise ship. I and other experts really think there are 3 possibilities here. The first is that a bunch of folks were exposed when they were traveling off the ship. Maybe they went to a cave or to a house that had rodent droppings that got aerosolized and they all got infected there. The second possibility, which would worry me if I were a cruise ship owner, is that there were mice or other rodents on the cruise ship that were running around and exposed a bunch of folks. The third possibility, and the one that most worries folks like me, public health experts, emergency physicians, is the possibility that there could be person-to-person transmission. And Jake, here's the important part. There has been a report of 1 strain of hantavirus in Argentina, known as the Andes strain, which is known to cause limited person-to-person transmission. Many of us are worried that it may be that strain that got onto the boat and that may be spreading, but it's far too early to know.
I'm here to tell y'all, if hantavirus happens, baby, get your house in order, because the nurses are not coming to class.
All joke aside, I hope this doesn't happen, because if this happens again, a lot of nurses, they are gonna call it, myself included. I am not going through another pandemic. What are the chances of living through 2 pandemics?
Crazy.
In your lifetime? COVID was just, almost 7 years ago. It's been a while, and that was a rough time. And I was a nurse through that. If you guys think that we are gonna live through another pandemic and still show up how we did during COVID, it was emotional turmoil for a lot of nurses. 10K a week, that is not gonna cut it this time. I'm talking about nurses are gonna need like 50 fucking K a week if you guys really want them to be in the forefront again like they were. Lesson learned. Cause 1 second we were essential workers. Everywhere on the internet in 2020, 2021, we were the shit, you know? And fast forward a couple years later, and we're no longer professionals. And you think we're gonna risk our life and our families' lives to do this shit again?
That's a good point. Nurses, let me know in the chat.
This is Jake Russmerin. He is a passenger on the cruise ship that is plagued with the hantavirus. Now, he is one of the 17 passengers that is from the United States. Actually has a travel blog on IG, and he had released a very tearful statement. If you haven't heard yet, the MV Honduras cruise ship that was working its way up to the African coast has been plagued with the hantavirus. 3 people have died, 1 is in critical condition, and 2 other crew members are now showing signs of respiratory failure. The hantavirus is the same virus that killed Gene Hackman's wife last year in New Mexico. This virus comes from urine and feces from rats, saying that this virus usually does not travel person to person, but they cannot confirm that at this time. They also don't know if this was an infection that was already on the cruise ship or that somebody brought in. Now, Jake did post this day 1 update yesterday. In that tearful statement, he said that everything on that ship felt very real and very uncertain, and that people were just trying to keep themselves calm because they just wanted to get home to their families. Now, this boat is anchored off of Cape Verde. They are not allowed to dock anytime soon. We still don't have any new information on that. There's about 150 passengers on there, 17 from the U.S. I talk more about the people who have lost their lives on the previous video. Make sure to hit that follow button because this story is developing minute by minute, and I'm sure we all want to know what's going to happen next and hope that everybody on board is safe.
I thought that people have been home for like 2 weeks though.
Everybody keeps saying, sink the boat, sink the boat, sink the boat. The boat's not the problem anymore. The problem is the 23 people that got off that boat 2 weeks ago.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, 23 people who live across the globe, mind you, got off that boat and went on about their business. Traveling, continuing trips, going to work possibly, who knows? Those 23 people carried on with their lives for the last 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks, and did not know that they had came in contact with this virus. Those 23 people, including the one man who's from Switzerland, who is now currently hospitalized because he has the virus and took it home to his wife. Those 23 people live in Switzerland, France, the UK, the United States of America, Canada, Australia, Taiwan. The boat is no longer the problem. The spread has begun. Now we pray.
We gonna see.
Someone who wasn't on the cruise ship has hantavirus now because they took a flight with someone who was on the cruise ship.
What?
That's not great. At first, I kind of wrote hantavirus off as like, it's no big deal, whatever, it's going to be fine, it's not very transmissible. But the fact that someone just flying with someone who had hantavirus gave them hantavirus, I don't love it. Because the truth is, hantavirus is traditionally very difficult to transmit from person to person. It's usually through rodents, and if it is person to person, it's usually like super close human contact. Not like standing next to each other, but like super close human contact. So the fact that somebody who was just on a flight with somebody who had it, got it, unless they were, mile high in, it's not great, because from what I can gather, there's not a tremendous amount of research into how transmissible this is, what the R-naught is. And the R-naught is essentially, if you get infected, how many other people get infected because of you. From what I can find, the R-naught is unknown. And the fact that this is transmitting in a way that people didn't think it would, it's not great. I don't think this is going to be another pandemic. It's not going to be anywhere near as transmissible as COVID, even if it is more transmissible than we thought. And the fact that they're contact tracing with the aggression level that they are right now, they'll very likely contain it. But the fact that we've gotten out of the World Health Organization and there's a lack of funding in this area, not phenomenal.
How are we going to have lack of funding in this area?
Here are some of the scariest things that people are talking about regarding the hantavirus cruise ship outbreak that is causing a lot of fear and anxiety right now. And I'm here to give you some context to help decrease some of the anxiety. So by the end of this video, I hope that you will feel a little bit better about this situation. Now, that being said, today is May 7th, 2026, and there are a lot of scary headlines and things are changing. But when we understand how this virus operates, it will help you understand that this is not likely going to be causing a global pandemic. Unfortunately, it is true that the case fatality rate of hantavirus is pretty high. About 40% of people who contract this infection pass away. There's no cure or vaccine for hantavirus. We can only provide supportive care at this time. And we will hear about more cases in the coming weeks of hantavirus infection because it can take several weeks before people come down with symptoms and can get diagnosed. but this is not a virus that spreads that easily. Even though you hear the term human-to-human transmission, it's not the same mode of transmission like you see with measles or SARS-CoV-2. Hantavirus requires very close contact with individuals, like you're sleeping with somebody or you're on a cruise ship, but you need to be symptomatic to spread hantavirus, not like with COVID-19 where there was asymptomatic spread, meaning people were just walking around not feeling any symptoms and they were spreading it actively to people. This is very different. It is highly unlikely at this time for this virus to be able to spread like wildfire. And I've heard a lot of people say that we've heard the same story before in 2020. And yes, it was very frustrating back then because there was a lot of mixed messaging, but part of that was because we really didn't have a good understanding of SARS-CoV-2 because it was a novel virus. It was new to us versus hantavirus is something we've known about for a very long time and have a much better understanding of how it's transmitted. The bottom line is that this outbreak should be taken seriously and health officials should be aggressively trying to contain it. But during this time, there's a lot of fear-based messaging that could lead to more misinformation being spread on the internet about conspiracy theories and miracle cures, which could cause a lot of harm. So the goal is not to panic here. The goal is to be able to provide accurate risk assessment about what's going on. So make sure that you are staying informed from credible sources of information.
But they still ain't got no cure. They've been new about it.
This rabbit hole just got a lot deeper. So if you've been following this, you will see that there's not a lot of people posting anything about it that are actually on the cruise ship. In fact, there's two people, right? That Jake guy, and then there's another guy. Both of them are travel vloggers, right? And Jake, we found out, actually works for the company, which was not disclosed. Then there's this anonymous Spanish guy who spoke to El País magazine. That's where we got the 23 number and all that, right? So I'm on his page and I had saw a proposal thing where for 2 years he spent everywhere he traveled. He filmed himself asking, will you marry me? And I was like, wait, where is this Jake guy's husband, partner, fiance, whoever? There is no one from anyone's friends, families, co-workers, coaches, neighbors, their jobs, no one, people who have gone back home, no one else, nor their families, friends, or anyone else they know have posted a single thing. And so I go and look and I see they even have he has a video and pictures of his proposal and what he did with his husband or whoever. And all these people are saying congratulations below. It's like hundreds of people, right? And it goes back, it's not like new people. It's like going back old to when he did it last year. All these people, right? I go and try to check out the husband's page. It's private. I don't see anything else posted. So then I go into the comments, just the people congratulating him, because obviously some of them were like more personal messages, like, I'm so happy for you guys. This is a dream come true for you, finally, all that. So I'm thinking that they're personal, they know him. I start clicking on these people's names. I go and see their most recent posts. Nearly all of them are in photography or some type of travel, Patagonia, that type of thing. Some posting 4 days ago, living their best life, no word about Jake or the cruise. 3 days ago, 2 days ago, I even have one 4 hours ago posting a girls trip and other things and traveling and having fun. And not a word about their friend who made national news crying about being stuck on this cruise ship with a deadly virus that has a 40 to 50% mortality rate. And no one else, none of the people who went home, none of the people who've died, none of the cruise family, friends, not a single person has said a word. Do you find that strange?
So what are you saying?
I find that very strange, amongst other things.
So what is she saying? What is she saying then?
Okay, as one of the few doctors on this app that is probably taking care of a patient with hantavirus, I thought I'd give a little perspective. Hantavirus bad news. There's a couple big problems with treating patients with hantavirus. The first is the incubation period is like 2 to 3 weeks long. So they're walking around for quite a while already infected, not knowing what's coming. And their initial presentation can be pretty benign. Fever, cough, stomach ache. And there's no reason to suspect anything worse until suddenly their lungs are filling up with fluid and their kidneys are failing. So I treated my patient with hantavirus when I was a resident. I was a second-year resident in the pediatric ICU at University of New Mexico Hospital. Since we pulled patients from all over New Mexico, parts of Arizona, Texas, and principally the Four Corners area, a known area to have hantavirus present, when we had a patient show up with those mild symptoms that suddenly turned very dramatic, hantavirus has to be on your differential diagnosis. Anytime you're taking care of a patient with hantavirus, you immediately need to transfer them to a higher level of care in order to have ECMO available. ECMO is the machine that actually bypasses your heart and lungs because oftentimes those parts of your body are failing. The machine will actually take your blood, pump it, oxygenate it, and then put it back into your body for you while allowing those organs to rest. And there's a decent chance that if you get hantavirus, you will end up on ECMO. Even if you don't, there's a huge chance that you're going to be in pulmonary failure, meaning intubation and respiratory support for quite a long time. And there's no other treatment besides supportive treatment for hantavirus at this time. Luckily, the child that I took care of actually did very well, only needed a little bit of CPAP, didn't need to be intubated, and didn't end up on ECMO. But with this hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship, is this going to be a problem for the rest of us in the world? Probably not. Hantavirus has been known about and cared for many, many decades. Outside of isolated outbreaks, there's never been a large pandemic of hantavirus. Gratefully so. Partially because the people who get it become so very sick, it's hard for them to continue to spread it. Also because there's very few variants of the virus that actually have shown to have human-to-human transmission. Even though there is some current suspicion that the current strain that's circulating on said cruise ship is the Andes strain that could have some person-to-person transmission, and the original patients that came down with hantavirus were going in Argentina before they boarded the cruise ship, which means they had a known exposure to that same strain. Potential for a worldwide outbreak, extremely low. It is a good reminder that scary diseases do exist, even if you've never heard of them. I've taken care of kids with botulism, taken care of kids with bubonic plague, as well as many other wild and crazy diseases that most people have not heard of except for in books. Hopefully you never will.
Man, this is very informative.
How likely is it that hantavirus is going to cause another pandemic? Not very likely at all. My name is Dr. Ross Newman. I'm a human physiologist and board certified pediatrician, and probably one of the few doctors on this app who's actually treated a patient with hantavirus. I made a quite popular video yesterday stating that the likelihood of hantavirus being a problem to most Americans was extremely low. Since a lot of people are still concerned that since this is the Andes strain of the hantavirus and has concerns for person-to-person transmission, that this could be more dangerous than I'm making out to be. Let me reassure you with some studies that that is likely not the case. See, hantavirus, unlike coronavirus, is nothing new. We have decades of research, and we even have recent outbreaks that we've been able to study in order to see how transmissible it is, even the Andes form. Even as recently as 2018 to 2019, we had a large outbreak in Argentina where some spreaders did go to large social events and spread the virus, resulting in 34 confirmed infections and 11 deaths. But just because something is spread from person to person doesn't mean it's all spread equally. Many viruses that are spread person to person are spread via different mechanisms. Some can be aerosolized through boogers or saliva. Some are through intercourse. Some are through transmission of blood. Some are what we call a fecal-oral route or poop. Not all of these have the same infectious rate. For example, it is much harder to spread hepatitis B than it is measles. And we do have studies showing the contagiousness of different bodily fluids with hantavirus, specifically the Andes strain. First and most reassuring is this study, which looked at 476 people exposed to 76 confirmed Andes-strained hantavirus infections. That showed that only 1.2% of household contacts had a spread of person-to-person of hantavirus, versus 17.6% of sexual partners. Even if you're having very, very close intimate contact with exchange of fluids, less than 1 in 5 will become infected. And if you're living in the same house as them, less than 2% become infected. This study looked at how much virus was contained in saliva, and it didn't show any active virus in the saliva, so we're not sure it can be spread that way. And this study looked at the presence of hantavirus, specifically Andes strain, in the breast milk, raising the potential of maternal to child transmission through the breast milk. So yes, there is potential for person-to-person spread, but hantavirus is not nearly as infectious as some other viruses that we are commonly seeing even right now with measles. So even if you're exposed to somebody on a plane or somebody serves you food, the chance of them infecting you is extremely unlikely. Which is why I will say again, it is extremely unlikely that hantavirus will become a pandemic that anybody, especially in the United States, has to have significant concern about.
This virus has been around a long time. It's not new. It traditionally spreads, as you mentioned, from contact with rodents. So mice and rats, people who are in rural areas, the Southwest, you tend to see cases, but it's contact with rodents, specifically their saliva, their blood, if they bite you, or if you come into contact with their feces or their urine. It does not typically spread person to person, so it's never been considered a major pathogen for people to be concerned about. There is one strain from South America in Argentina that has been known to spread person to person. This does turn out to be that strain. However, even with this particular strain, the person to person spread is relatively uncommon. So even though it's possible, it's relatively uncommon.
So we now have our first suspected case of hantavirus in someone who wasn't on the cruise ship. So what we know is that a passenger with hantavirus got off the ship early before they knew the virus was spreading there, and took a flight to South Africa where she later died. The Spanish authorities now say someone else on that flight has developed symptoms, and they've been quarantined in a hospital in Alicante in Spain, and they're currently being tested to see whether or not it is indeed hantavirus. It does, of course, raise the question of exactly how contagious this strain of the disease really is, despite the fact the World Health Organization still insists the risk to the public is low. Meanwhile, the cruise ship is currently heading towards the Canary Islands in Spain, where a huge row has erupted about whether or not to accept the ship and allow passengers to disembark before we know enough about this virus and exactly how it spreads.
This stuff, I don't know what to believe, man. I don't know.
Dr. Inflammation, back again. Now for another update on hantavirus. It's been 24 hours since I posted the last video. So what new has developed? Well, the WHO today described that there have been so far 8 cases, 5 of which were confirmed via testing and 3 patients who died. The other things that we also need to understand about this is with regards to incubation periods. It said that some sources say incubation periods of anywhere of 1 week to 2 weeks, all the way up to 8 weeks. And that does make things a bit complicated when it comes to exposures. And one thing that's been in the news that is really being closely watched is the fact that there were 3 people on the KLM Dutch flight who are actively being surveilled, 2 of which their lab tests for the virus have come back negative, and a 3rd that's still pending. And within that, there has been reports that one of them is a flight attendant who may have potentially come in contact with one of the patients who actually died. Who was on board the flight for about an hour, very briefly. However, she's currently in a hospital. Although it's not been reported whether or not she's presenting with any symptoms at this moment. So there's still not much clarity behind that particular case. The real reason why this is so important is because if it does come to fruition that this person may be experiencing symptoms and they had a very close contact, but for a very brief moment, this may potentially challenge what we have thought with regards to the nature of this virus requiring very prolonged exposures in order to have a proper human-to-human transmission. But we can't speak to any more of that until we get more information. So far in the United States, there are 5 people who are currently being surveilled by local health authorities in conjunction with the CDC for suspected exposures to hantavirus in states like California, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, and Virginia. So far, again, these are people who are being observed. None of them are confirmed cases, and so far they are asymptomatic. Now, although all of this information is still starting to evolve, if you look at many other creators who are virologists who are far more experts than I am in this particular field, many of them are speaking with a little bit more of a tone of less concern. And part of the reason why is really based on their knowledge regarding the the genetic constraints of something like the Andean viral strain. Although compared to some of the other forms of hantavirus, and that this does have more of a capability of being transmitted from human to human, it does seem over the last 22 years that there's been very slow genetic evolution to really make it a virus that has a much higher capability of being transmitted very quickly. Obviously, this is all based off of previously known knowledge, and this is why we have to continue to observe this and continue to see how this evolves. But, you know, I think you should continue to take all of these necessary precautions, as I had already outlined in the previous video. Going to keep watching this as it goes, and hopefully things get contained as quickly as possible, and so that we can avoid having something like a pandemic. Hope this helps.
A virus with a death rate higher than COVID spread on a cruise ship in the Atlantic. So the question now everyone is asking is, should we be worried? Well, here's what happened. The MV Hondius, a Dutch expedition ship that left Argentina weeks ago, is at the center of a confirmed hantavirus outbreak that has killed 3 people and left nearly 150 passengers isolated in their cabins. Right now, the ship is about 600 nautical miles from Spain's Canary Islands, but when it gets there, it may not be able to dock. Officials in Tenerife say the ship must stay offshore, and port workers say they haven't even been told what safety measures are in place. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Before hantavirus was even suspected, nearly 30 passengers from at least 12 countries, including 6 Americans, left the ship at an early port stop with no contact tracing. Global health officials are now scrambling to find them all. Those Americans are scattered across Arizona, Virginia, Georgia, Texas, and California. That's what we know so far. So no Americans are reporting symptoms currently, but the CDC is working with the WHO and the State Department to monitor every single one of them. This specific strain at the center of this outbreak is called the Andes virus. It's a form of hantavirus that, unlike most strains, can spread between people through close contact. That's part of why the WHO is paying such close attention and why passengers could potentially be forced to remain at sea for up to 2 months as they wait out the quarantine period. The incubation period for this virus can potentially take up to 8 weeks. But a major caveat here, this disease is difficult to spread on a large scale according to infectious disease experts. They say that person-to-person transmission can only happen through prolonged close contact, like living with someone. For those 150 people still on the ship, the question of when they get to go home still very much unanswered. Dr. John LaPook is here right now, our very own CBS News doctor. So how concerned should people be?
Well, you know, the WHO said today that the risk to the general public is low. Now, I know that's triggering for some people, right? Because they're thinking, oh my gosh, is this COVID? Is this, do we have to worry about a pandemic? This is totally different than COVID. And the reason is that the virus that causes it is something that we've known for 30 years. The virus that caused COVID was a brand new virus, SARS-CoV-2. We didn't know anything about it. Now, you have to be humble here, because you always have to put an asterisk and say, things could change. We're at the beginning of this. There are relatively few number of people who were exposed. What's going to happen in the next incubation period, which could be about 6 weeks? Are people going to pop up with evidence of being infected?
This hantavirus situation that's going on that cruise ship is more serious than people think. And it's starting to look a little similar to what happened in 2020. You have a ship filled with 149 people who could possibly be infected by the virus. Mind you, you had 3 people pass away. And one of those people that passed away, a 70-year-old Dutch man, was with his wife when he passed away. This man's wife took a flight from St. Helena to Johannesburg Airport. Mind you, this flight was a commercial flight. What does that mean? That means that this virus that's not usually airborne, which is airborne now, had a possibility of being contracted by more people that was on that commercial flight. Mind you, this woman was sick as well. Mind you, they did not tell this woman to leave. This lady left on her own to ride back with her husband's body. Now, if you remember, Cape Verde wasn't gonna let this ship dock. So now this ship is going to the Canary Islands. And when it gets to the Canary Islands, they're supposed to clean the ship. I don't know if they're letting anybody off this ship, but Spain said it was okay for this ship to come to Canary Island. But I don't think y'all understand how serious this shit can get. They're saying that this virus has a 9-week quarantine period. And also, the mortality rate of this virus is 40%. That don't sound scary to you? The question we need to ask is, how did that virus mutate that way? Again, this shit is way more serious than they're saying it is. Pay attention.
Hantavirus is a zoonotic disease, which that means it can be spread from animals to humans.
Rodents, like mice, carry the virus. Humans who come into contact with an infected rodent or even their feces and urine can catch it.
It's not typically one mouse. A lot of times we see heavy rodent exposure, and it is a family of virus as well. So there are multiple hantaviruses, and different rodents can actually carry different types of hantaviruses.
Infection can lead to 2 deadly diseases. One impacts the lungs with symptoms including fatigue, fever, and muscle aches. The second impacts the kidneys, causing headaches, stomach pain, and fever.
So that's why it's really important. If you are having some type of symptoms, it's always best to reach out to your doctor or your medical provider and letting them know if you have any sort of recent travel exposure or known rodent exposure.
Check out this map from the CDC. It shows recorded cases from 1993 to 2023. There are only 2 listed for Minnesota and just 5 for Wisconsin. It's more of an issue for states in the Southwest, like New Mexico, Colorado, and Arizona, where a drier climate might help it spread.
The rodents that we have don't have the same level of hantavirus disease as the rodents in the Western United States.
Still, you do want to be careful if you find mouse droppings around your house, specifically with how you clean them up. First, don't use a vacuum. This can just stir the fecal particles into the air for you to breathe, which is how people catch hantavirus. Instead, put on some gloves and grab a wet paper towel or rag, wipe up the droppings and throw them away. Maybe even wear a mask if you're in an area with poor ventilation.
Hantavirus is less likely to become pandemic than other viruses is because it's so deadly. And so that might sound counterintuitive, but because once you develop symptoms, the progression is so fast, about 1/3 or 40% of people may die from hantavirus, you're unable to spread it widely because you just don't live long enough to do so. Jeez. Hantavirus is a family of viruses, and the specific member of that family that we're talking about is called the Andes virus. So Andes virus is different from other hantaviruses in that this is the one hantavirus that has been shown to transmit from person to person. Typically, hantavirus transmits as a result of exposure to rodent, so rat or mouse, urine or droppings. People get infected when they're cleaning up after rodents. So where we typically see hantavirus is in very dry, arid regions. So in the United States, most of that has been in the Four Corners area, so Colorado, New Mexico, west of the Mississippi in particular. With Andes virus circulates in parts of Argentina and Chile. It requires prolonged and close contact of a much more intimate level of contact. So for example, a husband and wife who sleep together, who might kiss, not to say that this is sexually transmitted, but it's that level of much closer contact. There are no antivirals for hantavirus. There are no vaccines for hantavirus. Hantavirus attacks the lining of small blood vessels, making them leak. And when those blood vessels leak, you have extra fluid in air spaces in the lungs. The virus infects the kidneys. In addition, the heart can also be affected, which can lead to heart failure. Unless you have had direct contact, close contact with somebody who was a passenger on that cruise ship, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be affected by this current cluster, this current outbreak. And I think one really important piece of data will come in when the flight attendant who was exposed to one of the passengers who was later diagnosed with hantavirus, if that flight attendant tests positive for hantavirus, that would be a sign that more casual transmission occurs. But so far, we don't have that data, and we don't have any evidence that that is the case. This hantavirus cluster on the cruise ship is a scientific story, a public health systems story, and a human interest story. It is not a panic, it's a pandemic story at all. Earlier this year, the United States withdrew from the World Health Organization, and I think this kind of cluster illustrates the importance of being a member. The U.S. would be deploying people from the CDC, experts from the CDC, to be assisting with the outbreak investigation. But they are not participating in the way that they normally would, which does leave us somewhat flat-footed in our ability to respond.
All right, squad, that was another TikTok compilation, man. Look, If you made it this far, you a real one for real. Make sure you put that in the comments. But this right here, a lot of people is talking about it. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this in the comments, bro. And for my nurses out there, they said y'all gonna be moving differently if we was to have to get to that point. Let me know. He said 10K ain't gonna be enough. It's gonna have to be 50 a week. Y'all let me know, man. But be safe out there, man. Until next time, man. Self-love and positivity. Fire Squad, I got you and you know it.